All right, good morning. We are learning Le'iloi Nishmas Mindel, Mariam Bas Kalman Ruvain, her neshama should have an aliyah. We are at the bottom of Tesa Vav Amud Beis. We are talking about glass, and as we mentioned, glass is something which does not mention explicitly in the Torah, and therefore the Gemara is discussing what exactly is its status. And where we landed last was that the Gemara was telling us that glass is rabbinically like metal. Meaning, midoraisa, there's nothing. So Chazal came along and treated it, not like metal, like earthenware, like earthenware. And that's the last thing that we saw. We basically were treating glass like earthenware, okay? And the reason we treat it like earthenware, the rationale behind this was the fact that glass ultimately comes from sand, and that's similar to earthenware coming from the earth, and therefore Chazal wanted to ensure that just like, we all know that earthenware is tameh, so we treat glass tameh, and therefore it's there's no confusion, and that's what we're up to. However, the Gemara is going to question this because, as we'll keep on seeing, there are comparisons to earthenware which are inconsistent, meaning there are laws about earthenware which glass does not seem to follow. So if you're saying it's like earthenware, it has to be earthenware all the way through, and as we'll see, it's not like earthenware all the way through, and we'll have to figure that out. Okay, so a Tuma Tahara Gemara. So Elamei Ata, the Gemara asked in the last two words on Tesvav Beis, if that is so, that it's truly like earthenware, Lo Litamu Megaban, then glass should not become tameh on the outside. Should not become tameh on the outside. So there are different ways. We discussed this yesterday briefly. There are different ways that things could become tameh. Both, you could put something inside of something without touching its walls, just like hanging it. Let's say you have a cup and I hang something tameh within the airspace of the item. That's one way something could become tameh. You become tameh by touching it on the inside, on the walls on the inside. You touch on the walls on the outside. That's migaban on the outside. There's one last one which we're going to talk about a little bit, when there is a second receptacle, a second place where it's able to receive things on the outside of it. So a good example of this would be, our utensils are not made like this so much, but imagine you have a wine glass. Okay, so the main receptacle is where you put the wine in, but on the bottom, sometimes you could have the stem, not the stem, but under the stem, the base, where there's a little bit of a lip. So that lip is like another receptacle. Okay, that would be another place where, at least in some products, if you put something in that bottom receptacle, the secondary receptacle, it could cause the whole thing to become tameh as well. Those are a couple of different ways that things become tameh. Let's see what the next Mishnah tells us. So Allah Matznan, why do we learn kli cheres to kli neser? Earthenware vessels. Neser is vessels made out of sodium carbonate, which is, not so common, I don't think, anymore. But the point is that earthenware vessels, tumasan shaveh, their impurity is exactly the same. The way they contract and the way they pass on tuma is exactly the same. What are the examples? Mitam'in u'mitam'in me'avirehen. They both cause things to become tameh. They cause things to become tameh, and they themselves become tameh from their airspace. In other words, let's say you have a tameh earthenware vessel and you place something inside the airspace of the earthenware vessel, it becomes tameh. Or if you have a tameh item and you place it in the airspace of the earthenware vessel, it causes the earthenware vessel to become tameh. Umitaman me'acharehen, and they get tameh. They get tameh if you put something, again, in that case where you have a base, where you have a lip on that base, something goes into that base, the vessel now will become tameh, even though it didn't go into the main cavity of the item, but it'll become tameh. Ve'emi tamen megabeyan, and with earthenware vessels, it does not become tameh on the outside. In other words, if you have an earthenware vessel and you take a sheretz and you touch the sheretz, the outside of the earthenware vessel does not become tameh. Ushvirasan mitaharasan, and breaking it makes it pure. Okay, that's the end of the Mishnah, teaching us a whole bunch of laws about earthenware and sodium carbonate, clay neser. But what's missing from this Mishnah? Glass. If you're telling me that glass is exactly like earthenware vessels, then why is glass not mentioned? Right? That's what the Gemara is now going to infer. Clay neser, clay cheres, hudim tumasan shaveh. That implies that earthenware and neser, they are equal. Aval midiach rini lo. But other items, like glass, are not the same. So how are you coming along and telling me that that glass is exactly like earthenware? Here we see it's not. Right? So we're saying that it's not. Why? Which law do we see that it's not? Because the biggest leniency over here is the fact that with earthenware vessels, when something touches the outside, it does not become tameh, and presumably the implication is that with glass, touching the outside does become tameh, and that indeed is the law. So if you're telling me that glass like earthenware, then glass should also be tahora if something touches it on the outside, and yet this Mishnah is telling us only earthenware if something touches it on the outside, but everything else touching on the outside would become tameh. That's the Gemara's question. So the Gemara answers, Amri, they said, Kivan dechi nishtabru, yesh lem takana, since with glass, when it breaks, there's a way of fixing it. Now, you and I, when our glass breaks, we don't fix it. But if we were, I don't know, the Tozo family, and it would break, what we would do, we'd put it back in the, what do they call it? Or something like that. Kiln. Thank you, Marie. Well done. Okay, yeah, so they put it in the kiln, and they fire it up, and they make it again into glass, and you go ahead and you just blow into it and make it all into glass again, right? You can't do that with earthenware. Earthenware is broken, it is broken. With glass, since it's able to be refixed, able to be redone, kechli matachos, it is like metal. So what's the Gemara saying now? What the Gemara is saying is as follows. It's saying that on the one hand, it's like earthenware, right? And we'll have certain stringencies like earthenware. At the same time, because it shares certain properties with metal, we'll also give it the stringencies of metal as well. In other words, ironically over here, glass, which is on the one hand a rabbinically instituted item, a rabbinically instituted tumah, because we're concerned that it's going to be mixed up with other things, we'll take the stringencies of both earthenware and we'll take the stringencies of of metal. And we're going to treat it like both of them. In other words, we treat it like earthenware because it's like earthenware in the sense that it comes from sand, and we'll treat it and make it tamei like earthenware. At the same time, we're going to say it's tamei on the outside like metal, which normally would not be true for earthenware, since in some ways it's able to be fixed, and just like metal, if you break a metal item, we all know we can melt it down and can make it back into a metal item. So we're going to treat it like metal as well. Yes, Max.
I know this is not a primary point that we're using, but going back to the fourth line where it says that when you break them, that's how they become. You're breaking them; they're not vessels anymore.
Exactly.
So that you're then going to reconstitute some sort of vessel out of that.
Even if you can't, let's say you take the shards. Meaning, right? If I have a cheres and I break it, right? So keep in mind, you and I, we throw shards out. The whole this huge Gemara is going to have over here about using little shards to cover your wine. Instead of stoppers, like we have like these fancy stoppers. You felt they take out the air. They took a shard and they stuck it in. So if it's tamei and then you break it, you can take the shard and use it. Tahar. Yeah.
So it's not the vessel. It's not
the vessel's broken, right?
The vessel no longer exists, but the pieces. Right.
Exactly. Okay. So at this point, the Gemara is concluding that glass, on the one hand, because it's similar to earthenware, that's why we made it tamei to begin with. At the same time, since it shares certain properties with metal, we also give it the stringencies of metal in the sense that it's going to be tamei on the outside. Okay. The Gemara asks, if it's true that we're giving it all the stringencies, elami ata, if it's true that we're giving it all the stringencies, yachsru l'tumasan yishana. If you want to tell me to give glass all those stringencies, then it should go back to its original tumah, just like metal utensils. What does that mean? The Gemara is going to explain what this means. There's a concept called yachzul tumasan yishana, going back to its original tumah. What's the case? It's now we have a Mishnah, the Mishnah in Avodah Zarah, or Kalim rather, klei matachos, with metal utensils, pshutean umikablean temean. Both the flatware, pashut means like flat and simple. It's flatware, and anything that has receptacle is tamei. Okay. Whereas, we'll see something else. Earthenware, flatware does not become tamei, because when it came to metal in the Torah, it talks about the fact when it comes to earthenware, it only talks about the word toho inside of it, and therefore implies only something with a cavity, as opposed to flatware like a spoon, not a spoon, but a fork, a knife. Those things would not become tamei; they have no receptacle. But with metal, a metal knife, a metal fork becomes tamei. Okay, pshutein, that's this flatware. Mikablean, any cups, spoons, things of that nature, they're also tamei. Nishbaru, if they break, taharu, they become tahar. However, chazar va'asa mehen kelim. Let's say I go ahead, I have my metal utensil and it breaks. Okay, it shatters. Right? It happens. Let's say you go ahead and you refashion a metal utensil out of it. Okay, chazru tumasan yishana. It goes back to its original tumah. It goes back to its original tumah, right? Even though it broke, and even though midoraisa, the principle is that when something is broken, then it loses its status. Even if I go and refashion it back to its original cup, I had a metal whatever cup, and it broke, and then I went ahead and I refashioned it. Really midoraisa it's Torah, but midorabanan, it goes back to its original tumah. Right? Vilu gabe klis chuchis. However, when it comes to glass, Tanan we learned kli eitz, wooden utensils, uchli or, and leather utensils, kli etzem, and bone utensils, klis chuchis, and glass utensils, pshutin tahorin. The flatware is tahar, umikablehen tameim, and the receptacle type of things are tamei. Nishbaru, if they break, taharu, they become tahar. So far, so good. Chazar va'asamehen kelim mikablim tuma mikanu laba. If you go ahead and you make it back into utensil, then it is only going to be tamei going forward. But it does not revert back to its original tumah. You with me? See the contradiction, right? So mikanu laba in lemafreya lo. So from here on in, the glass is able to become tameh. Going backwards, it cannot. Right? So on the one hand, you're telling me, so let's go back. On the one, we just established that glassware is going to take upon it the stringencies. We're going to treat it the stringencies of metal. Now with metal, if I have a metal utensil and I break the metal utensil, it loses it's now tahar. But then I refashion it, it gets back its old tumah. So it had whatever, third level of tumah, it's going to have that same original level of tumah when I refashion it, midrabanan. So by glass though, it says, not that way. By glass it says you break it, it now loses its tameh state entirely, and when you rebuild it, it's susceptible to tumah, but it doesn't get its old thing. If you tell me taking the stringencies of metal, it should also have the same status. Yeah? So my answer is no. Kli zechuchis derabanan. With glass, let's remember, the whole tumah of glass is all rabbinic to begin with, right? In other words, glass is not mentioned in the Torah. Vituma yeshana derabanan. And this whole notion of breaking a utensil, then rebuilding it, getting the old status, that is all rabbinic as well. Bituma da'araisa chisu barabanan tuma. When it comes to biblical types of tuma, for example, becoming tameh on the outside, a metal utensil, if I touch a sheretz, a creepy creature, to the outside of a metal utensil, that is biblically going to transmit tumah. And therefore, for those types of things, I'm going to say, well, that's going to be we're going to take the same law and apply it to glass, because that's tumah de'oraisa. Bituma derabanan, but something which is rabbinic, like reverting back to its old tumah, which is rabbinic, lo achisu la rabbanan tumah. The rabbis did not go ahead and institute tumah as well. So basically, we're saying since glass. So again, let's put all the pieces together. No pun intended. The earthenware is tameh in the Torah. Metal is tameh in the Torah. Glass is not tameh in the Torah. Glass is similar to earthenware, and therefore the rabbi said we're going to treat it like earthenware. And then we point out, wait, but it's not entirely like earthenware because we have some stringencies that don't apply to earthenware that do apply to that do apply to glass. That do apply. We have impurities which don't apply to earthenware, apply to metal, and apply to glass. So what's going on over here? We say, yeah, since it's similar to metal in the sense that it can be reconstructed, whereas earthenware cannot, we therefore also treat it like metal. Then Gemara says, no, but it's not entirely like metal, because this whole notion of tumah yeshana, of reverting back to its old tumah when it's rebuilt, when it's reconstructed, does not apply. Gemara says, yeah, that's because that last example is rabbinic. The whole glass institution is rabbinic to begin with. We're not going to go that far. But something which is already a biblical tumah, like becoming tameh on the outside, there we will institute even though glass is rabbinic, we'll take the biblical tumas, like touching something on the outside, and apply them to glass. Good? Yeah.
When we haven't brought the psukim to at all about where we say that the metal utensils are. I remember vaguely some of the kli cheres, you have to break it, and these shoot up and these different things, but does it actually spell out clearly that metal is in the psukim? Yeah. They're not bringing that as a
somewhere in the Chumash.
As a way.
I'm just kidding.
Right. They're not bringing it as a way to.
Yeah. The Gemara is not getting there. Yeah. So sorry. For those listening, I've been told you got to speak up, or I got to speak up. I got to repeat you. Okay. So the bottom line is, yeah. I mean, these are all. Again, we're not. This is not really our focus, so we're not delving into the psukim, and we're going at a pretty quick clip, but the bottom line is, yeah, metal is explicit in the Torah. I can't quote you the pasuk offhand. I really can't. I'm sorry. I should be able to. Yeah, metal is explicit in the Torah. Earthenware is explicit in the Torah, and glass is not mentioned. Yeah. Okay. So one more question about this whole discussion, then we're going to wrap up. Not so bad, right? We're getting the principles, right? Yeah, more or less. Okay. So one more thing. If you were paying attention very, very carefully, you'll notice that there was still a type of thing where glass is not going to become tameh, and whereas metal is tameh. What was that? Okay, don't worry, I got you. So look a little further. The Gemara asks the final question. Pshuteyan mi'ali tameh. If you follow the last two Mishnayos, we said metal flatware becomes tameh. Glass flatware does not become tameh. But the problem is that that metal flatware, that is biblical, that is doraisa. So we just established now that all biblical laws of tumah will apply to glass. All rabbinic ones won't apply to glass. But flatware being tameh is doraisa. So why are we treating glass like, or why don't we say glass just like flatware that's metal is tameh? Glassware that's flatware of glass, should also become tameh. That's the Gemara's question. Okay? So the Gemara says, Avdi behu rabbanan hekera Ki heichi d'listrif alayu truma v'kachim. So the Gemara says that, okay, here's how the rabbis wanted to have one indication that it is not really biblically tameh. How do they do so? They had to have one law which is different to show you a little reminder, this is different. This is not exactly the same thing. Right? So on the one, this is like, when you zoom in, I happen to find a Gemara like this, Tumantara makes me dizzy a little bit, but there's something beautiful over here. When you read the halacha, in other words, we would just open a halacha book. Nowadays we don't deal with Tumantara so much. And it'll tell us glass is, glass is tameh, and if you break it, it becomes tahar from mikan laba going forward, but not retroactively. And it's tameh on the outside, and flatware is not tameh. You're like, okay, that's it. But now we just dissected the whole thing, and we're showing how each one of these things is based on a different reason, a different rationale. It's not random, and each one has a different thing to help you in a different way. So, right, so far we've established the whole institution is because it's similar to earthenware, and on the same time it's somewhat similar to metal. But now we're saying we can't go all the way. If we would treat it exactly like metal, and even take the flatware, and say the flatware is going to be tameh just like metal, then you would think it's d'oraisa. You would think that glass was actually the Torah. Just like me, who can't quote you chapter or verse about metal, I would say, yeah, maybe glass in the Torah. I don't know, maybe I missed that part. So whatever. I would think glass is also d'oraisa. And what's the nafkamina? Who cares? Who cares is that if my truma or kachim, okay, holy items, come into contact with this glass, if I think it's biblically tameh, then I'm going to go ahead and burn those items. Now, there's a law. Let me take a step back. There's a law. I'm not allowed to take truma or kachim, holy items, and burn them for no reason. I'm only allowed to burn them if they are actually full-fledged tameh. If they're not full-fledged tameh, I'm not allowed to burn them. Okay, I could, in certain cases, I was told to just let them rot, like we spoke about yesterday. But generally speaking, if it's not, I'm not allowed to take something holy and just burn it, right? So the Gemara over here is telling us that I need to have some reminder that glass is not biblically tameh. Because if I would think it's biblically tameh, I might end up burning my truma or kachim that touch it, and the rabbis want to ensure I don't, and therefore they're going to take one law, flatware, and say there you don't. It's not tameh. So now what that would do is that you and I, if we lived back in the day in a world where we had tuman tahara to this extent, and we would pick up a glass, and we would be discussing glass, we'd say, oh yeah, glass flatware does not become tameh. And someone say, why not? Like, oh yeah, because it's not really full-fledged tameh. Oh, that will help remind me because one day my kachim is going to touch a glass knife, and I'm going to think I should burn it. I'll be like, oh, don't burn it because it's not really midoraisa tameh. You with me? Right? So basically it's meant as a reminder to ensure that a person doesn't go ahead and destroy it. Destroy the truma or kachim that touched it. However, there's one more answer. Rav Ashi says no. Rav Ashi says, really, we are going to treat it like klei cheres all the way through. He's going to go a few steps back. Remember, the Gemara asked initially that glass, if you're telling me glass is like earthenware, what was the question? The question was, why is it that earthenware, when something touches it on the outside, it's tahar, right? Whereas with glass, something touched on the outside, we're saying it's tameh, right? Why? So I'm going all the way back, going a few steps back, right? The Gemara initially, all the way back to Svavam Beis on the bottom to Zayin and Aleph said that that glass like earthenware. Before we introduced the whole metal thing, right? And what are so the Gemara asked, the question that led us the whole metal comparison was that with earthenware, if a sheretz touches the outside of the vessel, it is tahar. Whereas if a sheretz touches the outside of glass, it's tameh. Why is that distinction? We had to say, oh, it's also like metal. Rav Ashi does have a much better answer. Rav Ashi says, "La'olam likli cheres damu." Really, it's not comparable to metal whatsoever. Really, a glass utensil is exactly like a earthenware vessel. Udakak hashlecha, that you asked, lo litamu bigaban, that it shouldn't become tummy on the outside. Rav Ashi has a clever answer. He says, no, hoel venira tocho kibaro. He says, since glass is see-through, therefore we're going to treat touching the outside like touching the inside. Right? In other words, it's not that because it's like metal that we treat the outside, that when you touch the outside, it's like you touch the inside. It's because since when I see the outside, it's like I'm looking on the inside as well. Like it's glass, it's see-through, right? And therefore, glass unique in the sense when I touch the outside, there I have to say it's like it was inside. Oh, it didn't go inside? Yeah, but I see the inside. So when I touch the outside, it's like it was inside, and therefore glass is indeed like earthenware. But when it comes to this law of touching the outside, it's not like earthenware, not because it's like metal, but because of the fact that it's translucent, because of the fact that you can see through it. Therefore, we treat it like we treat it like as if the sheretz touched the inside, even though it only touched the outside. Mm-hmm. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, it's a chiddush, but he's saying there has to be, right? It's an easier way, perhaps, of getting around some of these questions. Okay, we're going to pick up on Ksuba and other institutions. We're going to get back to more Hilchos Shabbos and move away from Tuma going further. Okay, have a great day.
If it's a simpler explanation.